Today's lesson is lesson 1.7, Compute with Scientific Notation. Remember to complete your work on a separate sheet of paper and keep to review tomorrow when we're taking our notes. What will we learn today? To add, subtract, multiply, and divide with numbers written in scientific notation. For example number 1, we are asked to evaluate 7.2 times 10 to the third power times 1.6 times 10 to the fourth power. Express the result in scientific notation. So let me rewrite that. 7.2 times 10 to the third power times 1.6 times 10 to the fourth power. Okay. Let's start off by grouping the decimals together. So I'm going to take 7.2, and we're still multiplying, times 1.6, and I'm going to group the powers together. 10 to the third times 10 to the fourth. The commutative property of multiplication allows us to do this. So now let's go ahead and simplify. 7.2 times 11.6 is 11.52. And 10 to the third power times 10 to the fourth power. If you recall, when we're multiplying powers, we add the variables, the exponents. So it's going to be 10 to the third power plus 4. So that gives us 11.52 times 10 to the seventh power. Now, as you can tell, this is technically not quite in scientific notation yet. We have two values or two digits over here on the 11. For scientific notation, our decimal has to be after the first digit only. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my decimal one place over. So now I have 1.152. By doing that, I'm going to increase my exponent to 8. So it's 1.152 times 10 to the 8th power. In example number 2, we're being told that in 2010, the world population was about 6,860,000,000. The population of the United States was about 3 times 10 to the 8th power. About how many times larger is the world population than the population of the United States? When they're asking me how many times larger, I can already tell that I'm going to be dividing. And I'm always going to be dividing the larger number, which is the world population, divided by the US population. So let's plug in the values. So we have the value for the world population as 6,860,000,000. So but what I'm going to do is let's write that into scientific notation to make it easier for us. So let's write it out again. And as you can recall from yesterday's lesson, we are going to start off at the value that's greater than 0, the first value greater than 0 in our number. So I'm going to have 6.86 times, and let me count how many spaces over I would jump. 3, 6, 9. So it's going to be 10 to the 9th power. So let me write my fraction down here. The world population, 6.86 times 10 to the 9th power over the US population, and the US population is already in standard notation. And we dealt with dividing with powers before. We split the powers and the decimals. Let's start with the decimals. 6.86 divided by 3. And that's going to be multiplied by 10 to the 9th power over 10 to the 8th power. So when we take 6.86 divided by 3, we get 2.28. I'm going to go ahead and round that up to 2.3. Multiply that, and over here for the division, 10 to the 9th power divided by 10 to the 8th power. If you recall, we subtract the exponent, so it's going to be 9 minus 8. 9 minus 8 gives us 1, so it's going to be 10 to the first power. Now looking back at my answer, or my question I should say, it says about how many times larger is the world population than the population of the United States. I can leave it like this, but to better understand it, why don't we change this now into standard form? So in standard form, my exponent tells me I'm going to move over one place to the right, which gives me 23. And we're going to say the world population is about 23 times larger than the US. That makes more sense than 2.3 times 10 to the first power larger than the United States. Example 3. Evaluate the expressions. Express the result in scientific notation. So in this example, we have 6.89 or 6.89 times 10 to the fourth power plus 9.24 or 9.24 times 10 to the fifth power. When we're adding with scientific notation, or in scientific notation, you have to have your powers the same. You can see that both of these powers, one of them is 10 to the fourth power, the other is 10 to the fifth. So one of these terms is going to have to be changed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the 9.24 to 10 to the fourth power. In order for me to do that, I'm going to take my decimal and move it one place to the right. So now it's going to be rewritten as 92.4 times, and it's 10 to the fourth power. And so that's going to be added to 6.89 times 10 to the fourth power. Now I'm going to combine the 6.89 plus 92.4. That's going to be together. And then we're going to have the 10 to the fourth power. The 10 to the fourth power does not change. All we're changing is the 6.89 plus the 92.4. So let's do that over here. 92.4 plus 6.89. Add that. 0 plus 9, 9. 4 plus 8, 12. Carry my 1. 1 plus 2 plus 6, 9. So we have 99.29. And I'm sorry, this should have been a times 10 to the fourth power. Now this is not technically in scientific notation yet because we have the two digits. Remember with scientific notation, the decimal has to fall on between the first and the second number. So I'm going to move my decimal over to the right, and now I have 9.929 times, because I moved to the left, this is going to increase to 5, or the 10 to the fourth power will now be 10 to the fifth power. So my answer will be 9.929 times 10 to the fifth power. For example 4, we're asked to evaluate the expression. Express the result in scientific notation. So we have 7.83 times 10 to the 8th power minus 11,610,000. We're going to have to change the 11,610,000 into scientific notation because that's going to help us to find the answer. So let's put our decimal in between the 1 or between the two ones. So we have 1.161, and let's see how many spaces over we jump. 1, 4, 7. So it's going to be 10 to the 7th power. And let me bring down the 7.83 times 10 to the 8th minus. Okay. So now we have both terms in scientific notation. But now I notice that my first term has the base or the power 10 to the 8th power, and the second expression has 10 to the 7th power. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the 7.83. I'm going to move my decimal over to the right one place. So now it gives me 78.3. And again, I'm going to drop the 10 to the 8th power down to 10 to the 7th power. Okay. Now I could have changed the 1.161, moved the decimal over to the left and increased the 7 to the 8, but that would have made it a lot more difficult. So I decided to move the left-hand side over to 78.3 times 10 to the 7th. So now bring down 1.161 times 10 to the 7th power. And now I can combine my decimals. 78.3 minus 1.161. And whatever I get out of that is going to be multiplied by 10 to the 7th power. So let's work that out over here on the right hand side. 78.3 minus 1.161. Add my zeros. I'm going to have to come and borrow from the 3. That becomes 2. Borrow from the 10. That becomes 9. Now I have 10 minus 1, which is 9. 9 minus 6, which is 3. 2 minus 1, 1. Then 78 minus 1 is going to be 77. So I'm left with 77.139 times 10 to the 7th power. Once again, our decimal has to be between the first and second digits in our number. So I'm going to move my number to the left one time. So now I have 7.7139 times 10, increase the 7 to an 8, 10 to the 8th power. Example 5, 593,000 plus 7.89 times 10 to the 6th power. So for this problem, we're going to change 593,000 into scientific notation. So we add our decimal between the 5 and the 9. So we can rewrite this as 5.93 times 10 to the, let's count the places to the end, 2, 5. So it's 10 to the 5th power. Plus, let's bring down 7.89 times 10 to the 6th power. Okay. For this case, it doesn't matter which way which one you change. I'm going to go ahead and move the decimal from the 5.93. I'll move it over to the left to increase this to 10 to the 6th power. So now I have 0.593 times 10 to the 6th power plus 7.89 times 10 to the 6th power. Now that I have the same power, I'm going to add 0.593 plus 7.89, and my result's going to be multiplied times 10 to the 6th power. So let's go ahead and add these over here. I'll take the 7.89, add 0.593, add a 0 there. 0 plus 3, 3, 9 plus 9, 18, carry my 1. 1 plus 8, 9 plus 5, 14. 1 plus 7, 8. So I'll have 8.483 times 10 to the 6th power. I see that my decimal is in the right place for scientific notation, so my answer is 8.483 times 10 to the 6th power.